Hello, this is Helen Mottee, and I want to welcome you to For Eternity.
I put my heart in your hands and you taught me to fly.
Hebrews 13 verses 1 to 3 exhorts us to let brotherly love continue. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing some have unwittingly entertained angels. Remember the prisoners as if chained with them, those who are mistreated, since you yourselves are in the body also. I want to begin our journey to Iraq with this poignant comment from Brother Andrew, founder of Open Doors, a ministry which has been serving persecuted Christians worldwide for nearly 60 years.
The very principle of the church is the unity of the body of Christ. And Jesus' teaching is the only one that matters. Jesus said, if one member suffer, all the members suffer with it. So if I have a toothache or my foot aches, my whole body is affected by it, and you probably see it on my face. I hope you see nothing now because I feel good, but tomorrow I may not feel good. And I know that there in prison, I have been in places where I stay with friends who live half a block away from a prison, and I can hear the cries when people are being tortured and what else does God have to do to get through to my heart until I feel their pain and can cry with them? And everything that will remind me is welcome.
Did we catch Brother Andrew's words at the end? He said, quote, "What else does God have to do to get through to my heart until I feel their pain? I can cry with them. Everything that will remind me is welcome." Yes, what does God have to do to begin breaking my heart for my suffering brothers and sisters? What must he do to break your heart? Our Western culture does everything possible to inoculate us against pain, discomfort, lack, a wanting of anything. We are not meant to go without. If we want it, we buy it, whether we can afford it or not. If we are uncomfortable or in pain, we sedate ourselves with distractions that numb our experience of that pain so we can get on with life. We cry our way through reality shows and are indifferent to the hourly tragedies happening around us in our world. So how do we really connect with our persecuted family? How do we become one with them, chained with them, as the writer of Hebrews wrote? Brother Andrew said, "Everything that will remind me is welcome." Today, we will be reminded of what Christians are enduring in the Middle East, and especially in Iraq. This is where Christianity was born 2,000 years ago, in the Middle East. It is not, as many assume, a Western religion, or worse, an Americanized faith characterized by money-hungry TV evangelists and healing shamans. Let's read about the birth of the New Testament church in Acts 2. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place. And suddenly there came from heaven a noise like a violent rushing wind, and it filled the whole house where they were sitting. And there appeared to them tongues as of fire distributing themselves, and they rested on each one of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit, and began to speak with other tongues, as the Spirit was giving them utterance. Now there were Jews living in Jerusalem, devout men from every nation under heaven. And when this sound occurred, the crowd came together and were bewildered because each one of them was hearing them speak in his own language. They were amazed and astonished, saying, "Why, are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we each hear them in our own language to which we were born? Parthians and Medes and Elamites and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the districts of Libya around Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes. Cretans and Arabs. We hear them in our own tongues speaking of the mighty deeds of God. And so the church was born, and persecution followed. Here is a sobering overview of what that persecution has looked like over these 2 millennia, and particularly what believers today are facing in the very birthplace of their faith.
Since its inception, the church has struggled against the face of persecution. Stephen became the first follower of Jesus to die for his faith, stoned to death for speaking out against the religious leaders of that day. His execution sparked mass persecution across Jerusalem. 10 years later, James would become the first apostle to be executed, followed by all the other disciples except for John, who was exiled to an island and then died of natural causes. As Christianity spreads throughout the Roman Empire, so does persecution. In 64 AD, Nero burns Rome for his new palace, killing thousands of Romans. When the emperor is suspected, he blames the Christians, who are then doused with pitch and used as human torches to light the palace. That same year, Peter is crucified upside down, and the Apostle Paul is beheaded. In 160 AD, the Apostle John appoints Polycarp as a bishop of the Christian church. Later, he is threatened to recant his beliefs. He responds, 86 years I have been his servant, and he has done me no wrong. How then can I blaspheme my king who saved me? Then they burn Polycarp at the stake. 203 AD, Perpetua, the daughter of an affluent man, is beheaded in front of her father for not recanting Jesus Christ. Perpetua assists her executioners when the sword gets stuck halfway through her neck. 1,000 years go by, faith goes global, persecution follows. July 6, 1415, John Huss and William Tyndale are both burned at the stake for translating the Bible into their own language, English. This was the first step for the Protestant Reformation in Europe. Japan, 1630, 300,000 Christians are executed by beach crucifixion, upside down in the morning low tide, so they wouldn't drown until the tide came in at the end of the day. 20th century, the bloodiest century in the history of the church. World War II, Lutheran pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer was put to death in 1945 for refusing to comply with Hitler's plot against the Jews. 1950, Jim Elliot is speared to death by Aucan Indians in South America when he arrives by plane to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. That next summer, his wife comes and baptizes the man that killed her husband. 1975, Chinese pastor Wang Ziming is executed by communist regime. Pastor Ziming attempted to bring freedom of worship to Christians in this oppressed country. 2006, former North Korean army officer Song Jong-nam is arrested by communist leaders for preaching Christianity. He eventually dies in prison. 2010, Afghanistan, Saeed Musa is arrested for converting to Christianity. While facing extreme physical torture, Musa's captives inform him that he will be released if he denies Jesus. He refuses and remains in prison. Word of his plight spreads to the United States. A massive social networking campaign follows, and church and political leaders plead for his release. Finally, after months of captivity, Musa is freed. Persecution of Christians still continues today. In nearly every corner of the world, Christians are told that they cannot worship freely.
Whether it's China or Vietnam, North Korea, Sudan or Nigeria, Iraq, Egypt, Pakistan, India, Christians are the most persecuted group in the world today.
Recently, the Islamic State of Iraq, which is really an al-Qaeda front group, said on their website that it is perfectly all right to target Christians now, that that's an acceptable thing, that that's an appropriate thing to do. And we don't hear the outcry from the world community like we should. In fact, a lot of people just don't even know some of the persecution that's taking place.
No one is ever arrested or put on trial. There is no real protection for these people. They are harshly discriminated against and marginalized so that they get very little relief. And meanwhile, the government of Baghdad had a budget surplus last year. None of this money went to help these Christians that the government sometimes pays lip service to as we like our Christians and we want them to remain in Iraq. Well, they're doing nothing to keep them in Iraq, and they're not showing any mercy for them once they have to take refuge abroad.
Since the 2003 U.S.-led invasion, thousands of Iraqi Christians have fled the country after being systematically targeted by fighters linked to al-Qaeda. Following Sunday's attack, the deadliest ever recorded against the Christian community here since 2003, many of those who chose to stay behind are now wondering where could they possibly go.
We used to have 1.2 million Christians in Iraq. Now we have probably got less than 200,000.
As a Christian in Iraq, you don't know, maybe you will be killed or kidnapped or blow up. They blew up before the Our Lady of Salvation Church. They blew up many house, Christians' house, and been killed. Because why? Because they are Christians.
Were there a lot of Christians in your community?
No, just us. All of them Muslims.
Except for you?
Yeah, except.
Tell me about your sister that lives in Iraq right now.
Yes. She's always afraid. She's always in the house. We don't allow her to go outside because we're afraid about her.
Why is she in danger?
Because she is a Christian. My mother went outside. She found this letter in front of our doors. The Christian in Al-Karad section, you should leave your house in 3 days or you will die. So I told you that.
Who was the letter from?
Al-Qaeda.
Listen now as Yusuf describes what happened in the attack on his church.
We heard bells from outside. So the priest come to me and tell me move all the people inside the church because we are afraid from bomb explosion car outside. So we will protect the people inside the church. So I will tell the people to move inside. I closed the door of the church. So they bombed the door and we entered to inside. They began to kill everybody, especially men first. Then they killed anyone, women, children, young men, old men. I was bleeding from my chest and my hand and my legs. So I think I will die because everybody, 6 beside me, died. So I think me too, I will die. Began to explode, bomb everything, and saying we are Iraq Islamic country. We will clear Iraq from Christian.
Last year, 93 of our people were killed. I baptized 13 people. 11 of them were killed the following week. That was devastating. Each one was devastating. But we will not give up hope, and we will not give up praising God, and we will not give up worshiping Him. And our church is still full every week because we know that when you have lost everything, Jesus is the only thing you have left.
When you have lost everything, Jesus is the only thing you have left. These words were spoken by Canon Andrew White, the Vicar of Baghdad. What do we have to lose here in our Western church paradigm before Jesus becomes more than a fashionable accessory to our life?
calls me his own. He'll never leave me, no matter where I go. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. He knows my name. Yes, he knows my name. He knows my every thought, every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. And hears me when I call. Yeah. And hears me when I call. Yes, he knows my name.
I have a Father. He calls me his own. He'll never leave me no matter where I go. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. It's a beautiful, truth-filled song. I remember leading this song in corporate worship at the first Micah conference I ever attended in Chiang Mai, Thailand, back in 2006. I was nervous, as I always am, but as I sang each line and listened to what I was singing, the truth and beauty of these words sank deeper into my spirit, and I could hear in that large auditorium the fervency and almost childlike wonder of everyone else singing out the truth of this song. That same morning, as we were hearing the testimonies of missionaries and medical workers who had joined the conference from across Asia, an announcement was made that a pastor had been shot and killed in India, leaving his wife a widow and his children fatherless. Shock, grief, and almost unwillingness to believe what we had just been told ebbed and flowed across that auditorium of people. Yet this was more the reality for Christ's people than the comfort and safety we were all enjoying in Chiang Mai. We were suddenly brought close to the suffering of our faithful brothers and sisters, indeed to martyrdom. Our Father knew our name, and he knew the name of our Indian brother who had died because of his faith. And God had allowed it for his purpose and for his glory. I'd like to read from a BBC News article from November 2013. Christianity is at risk of extinction in some parts of the world due to growing persecution of minority communities, a government minister has warned. Baroness Wasi said Christians were in danger of being driven out of countries such as Syria and Iraq, where the religion first took root. Syria's civil war and the instability in Iraq has seen many leave. Baroness Wasi said politicians had a duty to speak out against persecution and appeal for religious tolerance. She told the BBC that in some cases Christians were being targeted for, quote, collective punishment, unquote, by majority groups in retaliation for what they perceive as the injustices committed by Western powers. I am concerned the birthplace of Christianity, the parts of the world where Christianity first spread, is now seeing large sections of the Christian community leaving and those that are remaining feeling persecuted, she told Radio 4's Today. Tragically, what's happening is they are being seen as newcomers, being portrayed as an other within that society, even though they have existed there for many, many centuries, she said. The conservative peer said Christians were seen as, quote, legitimate targets over the perceived actions of their co-religionists. This concept of collective punishment and them being seen as agents of the West or agents of regimes is wrong, she added. We need to speak out and raise this with the countries where this is happening. Religious pluralism made countries stronger in a whole variety of ways, she said, from broadening the range of educational opportunities to injecting economic dynamism. Baroness Wasi, who was Britain's first female Muslim cabinet minister, said she had already had, quote, very frank conversations, unquote, with ministers in Pakistan, telling them senior politicians must set a standard for tolerance. Politicians do have a responsibility to set the tone, to mark out legal parameters as to what will and will not be tolerated. She added, there's an international consensus in the form of a Human Rights Council resolution on the treatment of minorities and tolerance towards other faiths, but we need to build political will behind that. Reading on, the leader of the Catholic Church in England and Wales said he agreed that the very existence of Christianity was under threat in some parts of the Middle East. There are real challenges for Christians in this part of the world, he said, to support and get alongside them, and also for politicians to understand that the presence of Christians is a great mediating factor, often, for example, between different segments of Islam, the Archbishop of Westminster, Vincent Nichols, told Today. So we are seeing that the persecution of Christians around the world, and especially in the Middle East and North Africa, is an issue that is increasingly gaining the attention of secular media and government spokespeople. It is not just Christians who are reporting these injustices and atrocities. Let's now move from the broad overview to the specific and shine the spotlight on Iraq, number 4 on Open Doors' 2014 World Watch List. Reading from the Open Doors webpage. There is a long history of Christians living in Iraqi cities such as Baghdad and Mosul. Christians have lived here for 2 millennia, but are currently on the verge of extinction. Sharia is the primary source of law and makes it impossible to apply freedom of belief. There are estimated to be approximately 330,000 Christians left of the 1.2 million in Iraq at the beginning of the 1990s. Large numbers have fled abroad or to the, until recently, relatively safer northern Kurdish region, where they face problems such as unemployment and inadequate schooling, medical care and housing. The situation in Kurdistan used to be better than in the areas around Baghdad or Mosul. However, the situation there is now rapidly deteriorating. Christian businesses were attacked in December 2011. Structural uncertainty, conflict and instability are on the rise since US troops started to withdraw at the end of 2011. The church faces many challenges, members succumbing to pressure, fleeing or being killed or abducted, and a lack of capable leaders. The situation is worse in the middle and south of the country, where traditional Christians are suffering as much as Muslim background believers, and possibly encounter more violence as a result of their visibility. There is a lot of fear among Christians in the country, ever since the bloody attack against Christians during a church service in Baghdad 2 years ago. Many Christians have been attacked in church during 2011 and 2012 as well. Reading from BarnabasFund.org. Following the 2003 US-led invasion of Iraq, there was a huge surge in anti-Christian threats, kidnappings and murders, and the violence has continued ever since. Many of the attacks have been centered on church buildings and church leaders, a clear message to the Christians that they are being persecuted because of their faith. Numerous Christians have received messages telling them to convert to Islam, leave or be killed. In July 2013, the body of a Christian man who had been kidnapped 6 weeks earlier was found inside his truck. Salem Dawood Coker's vehicle was booby-trapped with explosives. It is thought his captors tried to force him to carry out a suicide bombing, but he had refused. The kidnappers had contacted Salem's family, calling him a Christian infidel. Also in 2013, a church in Baghdad was fired at by masked men who seriously wounded 2 security guards. Christian-owned businesses in the area had been the target of bombings the previous day. As well as violent attacks, Christians also suffer significant discrimination, marginalisation and injustice. Hundreds of thousands of believers have fled their homes, reducing the Christian population to a quarter of the size it was in 1990. Many took refuge in Syria or Lebanon, while others are internally displaced in the autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan, which once provided relative peace and stability. But Iraqi Christian refugees are no longer safe in Syria, as anti-Christian violence threatens all Christians in the country, while Iraqi Kurdistan is now also seeing escalating tensions. Christians also struggle to find work to support themselves there. Iraq's Christians have few safe havens left. Some Muslims have expressed support for Christians. In October 2013, on the 3rd anniversary of a deadly anti-Christian attack, Muslims held a vigil at the targeted church and urged their beleaguered Christian compatriots not to flee Iraq.
يمحو الذنوب وينزع الآثام من عمق القلوب. من كالمسيح قد فدى كل الشعوب، من أجلهم تحمل موت الصليب. نعم هو يسوع سيد الفريق، نعم يسوع ملك المجيد، نعم هو يسوع سيد الفريق، نعم هو يسوع ملك المجيد. هو الرفيق
Let's listen to a report posted early 2013 titled Where God Weeps: Christians in Mosul, Iraq.
In Baghdad, we felt that our faith got weak because we couldn't go to church. We were very afraid of everything. We just stayed inside our houses and prayed. My kids often asked me, "Mama, take us to the church for the catechism." But I could not allow them to go because I feared for their safety. We have decided to stay here, and we won't be going back to Baghdad.
Since the overthrow of Saddam Hussein in 2003, hundreds of thousands of Iraqi Christians have been uprooted in a string of crimes committed against this peaceful minority. Repeated brutal attacks have caused Christians to abandon their homes to seek safety and hope for the future.
The problem is security. There is a vacuum. The army and the police are not at a level to protect people. They are not well trained. They are sectarian, Muslim for Muslim, Kurds to help Kurds, Shiite, much more for Shiite, Sunnite for Sunnite. If there is no security, you cannot work, and you are always in danger, your life in danger.
Although Christians make up only 2% of the population of Iraq, the UN High Commission for Refugees reports that they make up 40% of the 1.6 million Iraqis in search of asylum abroad. This striking disproportion is caused by the persecution and almost total lack of protection suffered by Iraqi Christians. Since 2003, about 2,000 Christians have been killed in multiple waves of violence throughout the country. Their number has plummeted from 900,000 before the invasion down to approximately 200,000 today. Of those who remain in the country, many are internally displaced. Iraq's northern semi-autonomous region of Kurdistan is a safe haven for many Catholics from the large metropolitan areas of Baghdad, Mosul and Basra. In recent years, new villages like Levo are being built throughout the countryside. Here, Christians enjoy far greater safety and basic housing, but little else.
In 2006, someone tossed a letter attached to a rock through our window, threatening us, asking us to leave Mosul because we are Christian. For that we left Mosul and came here. But we can't find work.
Families who have fled metropolitan areas like Mosul or Baghdad are struggling to make ends meet in the countryside, where farming and related skills are essential livelihoods. The help they receive from the Universal Church is a vital part in building their future.
Aid to the church in need helped to buy a bus. This bus is used for transporting students from Levo, Bersevi to Zakho, where there are schools, colleges and universities. Aid to the church in need also helped us with gift packages during Christmas and Easter. We thank our benefactors abroad for praying. This is the only way that we can thank them. Surely we don't have anything to give, only our prayers, and wish the best to them.
Erbil, the capital of Iraq's Kurdish north, has welcomed the greatest number of Christians since 2003. The area has seen great investment and growth. Safety is not a concern. The Christian population in Ankawa, a suburb of Erbil, has increased from just over 8,500 in the mid-1990s to more than 25,500 today.
This massive immigration have put upon us a lot of pastoral pressure. Every evening that our churches is packed with the faithfuls, we feel that there is a need for at least 3 new churches to welcome the faithfuls in the area. We have also agreed with the Holy Spirit University in Kaslik in Lebanon to start a joint project in opening a university within the area. These projects definitely would be at the service of all people. Many people would find that there was secure jobs for them and for their families.
Catholic leaders are trying hard to reduce the phenomena of emigration, providing the vast number of internally displaced families with what they need to rebuild their lives remains a great challenge for the battered Church of Iraq, a task which requires the support of Christians from around the world.
I would ask all to join our efforts, convincing our people, stay, because here you have a witness to live. Our life here is not easy, but it's one of great opportunities of joy because it has a witness for what it means to be a Christian.
Did you catch these profound words at the end? Our life here is not easy, but it's one of great opportunities of joy because it has a witness for what it means to be a Christian. A witness for what it means to be a Christian. Let's pause for a moment to ask ourselves, is my life a witness for what it means to be a Christian? Does my life consist of great opportunities of joy because it has a witness? Strong's Concordance shows that our English word witness comes from the Greek word martus, from which we also get the word martyr. Now, that's a concept we shy away from here in Australia, indeed in the West. Martyrdom? No, thank you. That's not cool. I'd like to read from an interesting commentary from letusreason.org. We read, in Greek, the word witness means martyr, one who bears witness by his death. They, the disciples, were soldiers for Christ, those who have died to their old life and were willing to live in the power of the Spirit and go wherever the Lord would lead them to give the gospel. They were totally committed and were willing to give their life if necessary. Continuing on, Paul's attitude is exhibited in Romans 14:8. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. The article ends with this sobering observation. Certainly, if one made this appeal today and promoted this type of selfless Christianity, it would empty out much of the church, having only the serious ones left. But this is how the early church took the seriousness of their faith. And not just the early church. The believers in Iraq are serious about their faith and about their witness. Their life is not easy, as we heard, but they can still find joy in their testing circumstances. Could we do the same?
Christ revealed himself to me, enslaved my soul to set me free. I was bound to him at Calvary and found a better freedom. That soul who suffered in the dark has purchased and unchained my heart. A shining slavery did impart, and I found a better freedom. A better freedom can't be found by those unwilling to be bound. A better freedom is not known by those whose hearts will not be owned, and those who follow find a better freedom. We never can be truly free till we're bound to this community. The incarnation lets us see a path to better freedom. A slave to sin, my life before was bolted like a prison door. But in slavery to the risen Lord, I found a better freedom. A better freedom can't be found by those unwilling to be bound. A better freedom is not known by those whose hearts will not be owned. And those who follow find a better freedom. Come to Him and find a better freedom. Follow me and find a better freedom.
Here is Colin Freeman
Looks more like a
reporting for the
fortress than a
UK
place of
Telegraph.
worship, but this is a parish church in Iraq. In the 10 years since the fall of Saddam Hussein, 62 churches have been attacked by Islamic extremists. By far the worst one was here at Our Lady of Salvation in Baghdad. 3 years ago, a group of terrorists stormed into an evening mass, taking more than 100 people hostage and killing 58. This man survived the attack by hiding along with others in the church's sacristy.
Was suicide bombers. They explode themselves, and after they said Allahu Akbar, and make the big bomb between the people.
Are you going to stay in Iraq yourself?
Yeah, of course. I will stay and stay.
What about other Christians you know? Are many of them leaving?
Yeah, a lot of Christian people leave Iraq. They need to protect themselves, and they fear from the future.
This is a Christian church in the neighbourhood of Dora in South Baghdad. Dora used to be one of the biggest Christian communities in the whole of Iraq, with about 150,000 Christians here. Now it's estimated that there may be less than 2,000, and of the 7 churches that originally served Dora, only 2 of them are now still open. The reason for this is that after the US invasion, Dora found itself on the front line of Iraq's religious tensions. It became a stronghold of Al-Qaeda, who bombed local churches and killed and kidnapped many Christians. It's a similar story at St. Joseph's Church in central Baghdad. The current priest was himself a victim of a kidnapping back in 2006.
This is a whole Christian area, was in the past, between 4,000 and 5,000 families here in the Karada. Now, I will not expect actually more than 500 families in all of it. If the situation continued in this way, I think there will be no Christians after 20 years or 30 years. There will be very few Christians who will stay here. That's a fact.
And what about the children of Christian believers? From christianfreedom.org, under the title Suffer the Children, we read, Sarush, an Iraqi Christian, has been abused for his faith more times than he'd care to remember. He is 9 years old. Having fled Iran years before he was born, his parents had already resettled in Iraq when they were introduced to Christ. His father, now a pastor, as well as his mother, continuously received death threats for converting to Christianity. When Sarush was in first grade, the teacher beat him in front of the class and told him he was an infidel, like his father. And when his younger sister, Sevda, came home from kindergarten one day, claiming that her teacher told her that their family was going to, quote, burn for being Christians, the girl was too afraid to return to school for the rest of the year. Nuria, just 6 years old, endures similar persecution as a child of Iraqi Arabs who have converted to Christianity. Although she attends a Christian school in the city of Kirkuk, she hesitates when strangers ask her whether she is a Christian. And when her Muslim relatives come to visit from Baghdad, Nuria must be careful not to sing Christian songs in their presence, lest their extended family discover their true faith in Jesus Christ. But as the long-reaching effects of radical Islam continue to permeate much of Middle Eastern society in the wake of the Arab Spring, ostracism from neighbours and even family members is not the only thing Nuria and her family have to fear. As their city continues to be shaken by political unrest, violent bombings and attacks, kidnappings and even murders have become all too commonplace in Iraq these days. The following report contains graphic descriptions of some of the atrocities that have been carried out against our sisters and brothers in Iraq. So, a warning to parents if your children are listening.
The violence of war brings many unintended consequences. In Iraq, one of those effects has been the destruction of the Christian community. Unlike the Muslims, the Christians have no armed militias to protect them, and so they're easy prey for the Muslim extremists. 2.5 million Iraqis have had to flee their homes since the start of the war in 2003. Christians who have been terrorized by Islamic radicals have sought safety in their ancestral homeland in the Nineveh Plain.
If you ask me what is going on in Iraq and what the Chaldean community or the Christian community in Iraq has endured, there's a lot of gruesome stories needs to be told. One of them, for instance, is a widow that her husband was killed, and here her son was kidnapped and she was asked for a ransom. They demanded the ransom. She couldn't come up with the ransom. It's a habit in Iraq. When you provide a meal, you put on, you serve it in a big dish of rice, and on the top of the rice, the pieces of meat. What the fanatics and the fundamentalists do is they took the child, they chopped his head, they put him on the top of the rice, and here we go. They bring it to the mother, and here's your dish now. You have children, young teenagers, youngsters, they were asked to convert to Islam, and they refused because that's not where the Christian teaching is. And here we see them crucified in the open. Some of them were tossed in wells and have them burned. There's so many cases, so many situations that went untold.
We have an ancient community that is in real risk. We have been a contributor to that risk, and we have a responsibility to help protect that community, and the Christians in Iraq deserve that protection, and I and many others here in the Congress, and this is not a partisan issue, are determined that we are going to do everything we can to give the kind of protection which morality and justice and history requires for that ancient Christian community in Iraq.
The Iraqi Christian refugee crisis has been called the largest humanitarian emergency in the world today. The failure of both the Iraqi and the United States governments to protect them has put this ancient community at great risk. Without assistance and public pressure, they are in danger of becoming extinct.
As we reach the end of our journey, I would like to read to you from Voice of the Martyrs Persecution and Prayer Alert, dated February 2014, headed Iraq, Christians Facing More Than Desperate Crisis. Canon Andrew White, known as the Vicar of Baghdad, has requested urgent prayer for the Church in Iraq during this time of intense violence in the country. With frequent bombings and shootings in cities such as Baghdad and Mosul, monthly death tolls have soared recently. January's toll of more than 1,000 killed was the highest in almost 6 years. Canon Andrew, a partner of the Voice of the Martyrs, recently shared that some of the young people at the church he leads have been among those tragically killed. His Christian friends are leaving and begging him to leave too. Hundreds of our people have left the church because they have left the country, he explains. The hundreds left are those who cannot afford to leave, so the poverty and needs seem greater than ever. I honestly cannot tell you how terrible things are. We are in more than a desperate crisis. We need your prayers. Yet Canon Andrew remains resolute. I will not leave my people here, however bad it is, he says. I am not leaving, and neither is God. Let us remember our brothers and sisters in Iraq. Let us chain ourselves to them as we pray for them, tell their stories, and support them in the specific ways we are called to do. It's time for us to disengage with the momentary and obligatory horror we feel when we see or read about what is happening in Iraq, and then moments later shelve the stories and the images somewhere in our heads so we can get on with our lives. For our own sakes, we must connect with our suffering family, not only in Iraq, but globally. As we stand with them, they will teach us, and we will be the ones who are blessed. This is Helen Mottee for Eternity.
For eternity.
For Eternity is produced in the studios of Rima FM, Port Macquarie.